How long do you need to fast, especially if you're already ketotic, before you start to see benefits? Man, if this isn't one of those ones that no one seems to have a definitive answer, and I want to talk about the science, you're going to enjoy this video. Hey team, Mike here at After 40 Fitness. Another great question came in today on social media about how long do I need to fast before I start to see benefits? And I really think the reason that continues to rage as a debate is because the science is controversial. The science, just so you know, and I'll demonstrate this for you shortly, always uses followers of a SAD diet. Right? I haven't seen a really good study yet done on the time it takes for intermittent fasting to kick in for ketonians. It really is frustrating. And so because of that, and I'll show you some examples of this shortly, the science always starts with how long it takes for someone to get into ketosis before they can talk about autophagy, fat burning, etc. So let's deal with that today. You're going to enjoy this conversation. But listen, if you haven't yet, or if this is your first time to my channel, please do subscribe. Hit that bell notification button and select all. I put out 2 or 3 videos a week right now. Most are of a low-carb keto nature, but definitely health and fitness and wellness. Some HIIT-style workouts as well. You may want to look at those and try them. So without any further ado, let's get into this topic of IF. And I'm going to start off with my buddy Thomas DeLauer. Just did a video last week. And I say buddy kind of loosely because him and I are at odds all the time on what the science says. And I'm going to start off with a study he referred to showing that you have to be fasting for no less than 16 but preferably 20 hours before the benefits of fasting kick in. Thomas first uses this article here by George Cahill. Really is a pioneer in this space. And the article is called Fuel Metabolism and Starvation, as you can see. And the first graph that George uses is this one here in front of you. Let's first just start with Thomas's rendition of what we see here. Let's get his interpretation.
So this annual review of nutrition journal, if you look at this image that's popping up on the screen right now, you'll see one very interesting thing. Okay, what happens at 16 hours? At 16 hours, the rate of gluconeogenesis surpasses the rate of glycolysis.
All right, so do you see it? Do you see at 16 hours then gluconeogenesis passes the rate of glycolysis? You're wondering what's the impact of that. I know I was. Thomas, what does that mean? Let's hear what he says.
So we see at 16 hours, the rate of gluconeogenesis increases and surpasses that of glycolysis, meaning 16 hours is the magic number where the magic kind of begins.
So what does that mean for you and I? See, this is where my point of contention starts. What if your rate, like mine, of gluconeogenesis has already passed glycolysis years ago, months ago? At least let's assume at least a month ago, so you're fat adapted. If you don't know what that means, I'll put a link down below to a video on how to tell if you're fat adapted. But that really just means that you're now efficient, okay? Not only at burning fatty acids, but at producing and using ketones. And your rate of gluconeogenesis is pretty much your primary source of endogenous glucose production. You can't count on the glucose in your diet as an exogenous source of glucose, so gluconeogenesis becomes the bulk of it. TD, Thomas DeLauer, doesn't take that into account. In fact, notice what he says about ketone production right now.
At 16 hours, that's when you're really starting to have some good ketone production.
And there you have it. What about you and I who come into a fast already in ketosis? See, in this information, in this data that Cahill used, he used people who were followers of a SAD who took about a 16-hour fast before they went into ketosis, before they began to produce detectable ketones. Well, that's not a fair comparison. You and I are already in that enhanced metabolic state. We're already ketotic when we begin our IF. Therefore, if it took them 16 hours and you and I come into the fast, you can see how, never mind the first 16 hours, we're there. So if Thomas then turns around and spends the rest of the video talking about what happens post 16 hours, for you and I, think about it for a second. If it took them 16 hours to produce ketones and you and I begin with it, you could conceivably say that keto is a fasting mimicking diet because we're already there. We're already catabolic. More than likely, we're already in a caloric deficit, but we're already producing ketones. We're already starting for these people where they start at 16 hours. So now the rest of the video again is Thomas talking about the benefits that come from going beyond 16. 16 out to 20, potentially 20 out to 28, right? And yet that means for you and I that as quick as we finish our last meal and digest it. So my point of contention when I talk to my clients, I say 4 hours after your last meal, your insulin has dropped back down to neutral, your glucose has come back to your homeostatic baseline. Okay, we're starting from 4, which means from 16 to 20 is 12 hours. That means you do 16 hours of fasting on a 16-8, typical IF of 16-8. You have gotten all the benefits that you can possibly have, and beyond that is just bonus. right? So when people talk about a 16 and 8, the benefits beginning at 16, and you see some videos, some images perhaps occasionally in social media where someone will say that the benefits of fasting start at 16, 18, 20 hours. Yep, every one of those images is based on science, based on a follower of a SAD, of a standard American diet, of a Western North American diet, meaning they require 16 hours to get into ketosis, into that catabolic state that you and we inherently have in place. I can't help but think that anybody who talks about autophagy and the benefits of fasting taking any longer than, let's call it 12 hours, really isn't considering our underlying metabolic state, right? The context of what state you're in, whether anabolic or catabolic, whether in ketosis or out, plays such a role. And when you look at the drivers of autophagy, then nutrient deprivation, right, being in a caloric deficit, spikes AMPK. AMPK elevates. And when AMPK elevates, that is a driver for autophagy. However, if the opposite of that is nutrient surplus or in excess, or in fact overfeeding, those things of course spike insulin being a big driver of mTOR, and both of those things prevent the creation of autophagosomes. Autophagosomes being the driver, and not to mention the testable element of autophagy. And so we have got to make sure that we're in an enhanced metabolic state, aka, guess what that happens to be? Ketosis. That almost guarantees, and I should say almost, right, be careful with that because you can eat in a surplus while in ketosis, that our underlying context means AMPK is elevated. At the same time, insulin and mTOR, our goal is to keep them low. Therefore, we are in a context that is so beneficial and so promotes autophagy. You know, Sim Land is another one of those guys, just like TD, who likes to use science to make his point. Look what he says here.
Usually it takes about 16 to 24 hours of fasting to deplete liver glycogen, but if you eat low carb the day before, you'll be able to do it probably overnight.
So again, speaking to someone who follows a SAD, the recommendation from Sim as well is eat low carb the day before. So you and I who eat low carb every day, can easily get into autophagy and the benefits of fasting, well, overnight. Call it 8 hours then. So why don't we saw it off at the end of this discussion and say that while it takes 16 hours for everybody else to get into ketosis to begin to benefit from the benefits of autophagy, including maximum weight loss and autophagy, it sounds like you and I can do it in as little as 4, but let's go with Sim's recommendation of 8 hours. Therefore, we are in the breadth of it, in the mix of it, in the depth of the benefits of fasting about 8 hours after we begin a fast, if we begin in the enhanced caloric state known as ketosis, and we're already low carb, low insulin, low mTOR, heightened AMPK, heightened glucagon, right? Insulin, mTOR are bottomed out. Oh my goodness. I think we should stop arguing about this and just call it a day that after 8 hours, we are getting all the benefits of fasting that there is. Okay, I know more science will come out about this, and when the science is done on the benefits and tests are done for autophagy and those who are let's call them fat-adapted ketonians, I think you're going to see that what, you know, these numbers that we throw out for people who start out as followers of a SAD and therefore have to fast for 16 hours just to get into ketosis, well, why are we even talking about that? Why is that being used as a gauge for you and I? Right? So I tell all my clients, listen, if you make it through the night without a fast and in the morning you continue your fast, let's say till noon or even a little bit longer, God bless you. You're getting all the benefits. And no science that I've seen so far has given any compelling reason not to believe that's the case. Okay, I hope that meant something to you. I hope you enjoyed that. If so, please do leave a comment and don't forget to hit that like button for me. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you in the next one.